Hey, welcome to another Purple and Bold podcast from DNR Media and the Daily News Record. Be sure to, look us up, search DNR-Media on, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, wherever you listen to those, like and subscribe, all that stuff. Get that out of the way. We've got, we always say it's a special S or we have a special guest whenever we have somebody come on with us. But I think this is, it truly is special to have Casey Kroll on here with the Big Man Foundation. He's going to tell us a little bit more about what he and that organization do to help, coaches in particular. And yeah, like I said, Casey will talk a little bit about his JMU connections and how he got involved in all this. And I'll let, you and Katie kind of take it away. I guess first off, kind of just tell us about, your JMU background and how that helped you get involved in the Big Man Foundation and what that is for people who maybe haven't followed that story in the DNR or anywhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you again for having me. Before I answer that question, do you mind me asking who was your last guest that you all had
on? We've done it solo here a couple times. So I think the last one might have been Kirby Burkholder, played basketball.
Oh yeah, Kirby. She was there when I was there. Very cool.
Yeah.
So again, thank you guys for having me. My connection to JMU, I do have a connection to JMU. I was a student athlete there, a member of the football team from 2011 to 2015. Back when we were a lowly FCS school, that was way before we were a college football playoff powerhouse. But I did, I feel like I have a brick in the wall with building that unique perspective on the program from where it was then to where it is now, and it's something I'm very proud to be a part of. And so I was a member of the offensive line from 2011, 2015. It was, I had this unique experience. I went out to Oregon for the college football playoff game, and I pretty much told my wife as soon as we got announced in the selection show that I was going to be in Oregon come hell or high water, because it just, it's such a special moment. My first year coaching was after my senior year at JMU. So it would have been my first year coaching would have been 2016-17 season, which was the FCS national championship. And that a good first year to be a first year coach. But part of me thought that was going to be the pinnacle of JMU football for the foreseeable future. And I don't think anyone even thinks about that anymore, that's a good thing. But I had this unique experience when I was in Eugene. I just wanted to go get into the game a little bit before everybody else. And I just wanted to take it in, because I had seen the program go from, after my redshirt sophomore year, we finished 6-6. We had a whole new coaching staff coming in. I saw it through from the inside, from being a student athlete the next few years, kind of rebuilding the program. And then as a coach, that first year winning the national championship. And then I'd stayed attached to the program and been friendly with the coaches that had come in and out over the last few years. And so I just want to take a moment to just really appreciate the moment and the accomplishment, and knowing that I had a very small brick in the wall that got us to that point. And I walked in, I must have been one of the first people in the concourse, and went to the JMU section where I had my tickets. And the only other person that was in the entire section was Jeff Bourne, doing the same exact thing, just sitting there, taking it all in. And I sat next to him, and I caught up for 10 or 15 minutes. And you appreciate it when you're a student athlete, but the farther removed you get, the more appreciation you have for the administrators and your coaches and everybody else that had a role in your student athlete experience. And I just thanked him, and I told Jeff Bourne that, my student athlete experience at JMU, one of the most formative things I'd ever done in my life. And it really did, and honestly gave me the building blocks, gave me the tools in my tool belt that I needed to kind of go out into the real world and chase down my dreams. And so I meant that sincerely, and I stand by that now. And yeah, I just wanted to share that. So my story, how I got to the Big Man Foundation now is, my senior year, it was really before my senior year. My junior year, I'd had like 3 or 4 offensive line coaches in the 3 or 4 years that I'd been there, and just high turnover. Nothing against my previous offensive line coaches or any of the coaches that we had before. I still keep up with a lot of them. They've all been super good to me. But just it always kind of felt like a manager employee relationship with them. Like the athletes were just kind of a means to the end to the coaches, and just kind of got almost like burned out a little bit. And part of it was because, growing up, I played all kinds of different sports year round, and now it was just football for 5 straight years. And so I was almost ready for a turning of the page, ready for something else. I was studying political science. I wanted to go to law school. And so, yeah, just that kind of a crossroads in my life. And we hired an offensive line coach my junior year, which would have been the first season with Coach Withers, named Brad Davis, who is an incredible coach, even better human being, and really just made football fun again. Took a vested interest in us, the offensive linemen, as people and human beings, and are well, developing us holistically, developing the person, not just the athlete, and really just started to change my perspective on things. And then he left after that junior year, my junior year, and he's gone on to do big and great things. He's been in the SEC as an offensive line coach for I think like 10 years now. He was at LSU previously with that staff, and I think he's out of coaching right now. But I have no doubt that he'll land on his feet. And my senior year, they hired Jamal Powell to replace Coach Davis, and they were actually really good personal friends. They had worked together when they were like fresh out of college, and so they went way back. And Coach Powell just kind of started where Coach Davis left it. And Coach Powell was really just the ultimate like players coach. Meetings were fun, held us to super high standards. And it sounds weird, but like he really took an interest. He wanted us to be not only better football players, but took our academics very seriously. Had a lot of academic meetings with him, and just overall just made me a better person, a better friend, a better brother, son, you name it. And so when it as my senior year started coming to a close, and it was starting to think about what I was going to do for my career for the next 40 years, sitting in a cubicle looking at documents and being a lawyer started to seem less and less appealing. And I was just kind of started to get drawn towards coaching. And, to me, I've always had a passion for serving other people. And to me, football coaching seemed like a unique vessel to be able to do that, to be able to mold young people and make an impact on them the way that my coaches had on me. And so I started having these conversations with Coach Powell my senior year, and he started encouraging me to follow through on it. And, I finished 2015, and Coach Powell let me stay on as this kind of graduate assistant. I still had another semester of graduate school that spring, and so I stayed on, learned under Coach Powell. He encouraged me to kind of hitch my wagon to him. He was a young, up-and-coming, going to be a coaching superstar, and so I did that. And we had our first spring practice that next season with Coach Houston, and I was hooked. I thought that this is awesome. I could see myself doing this for the next however many years, and so that's how I got into coaching. Again, I stayed on at JMU through that spring, that summer, into the next season, and really started to form this really close bond with Coach Powell. It went from he was my coach to now he was like my peer, my mentor, he's kind of like the big brother I never had. I'm the oldest of 4, and so I looked up to him, and we got really, really close. And in football coaching, as you guys probably well know, we spent a lot of time together, almost every day of the year, in the same room, whether it was the staff room and a staff meeting or just in his office doing recruiting stuff. And so just really got to know him, someone I really came to respect and look up to, and our relationship just kind of evolved. And like I said, he was a up and coming coach. He played at TCU, was originally from outside of Houston, and his goal was always to get back to Texas and be a coach. And we were lucky a year or two later, he landed at SMU, which coincidentally we had beaten my senior year at JMU. So it was kind of full circle for me, but I was able to go with Coach Powell to SMU and be his graduate assistant there. And I'll never forget it. We went through that spring. It would have been spring of 2018. So we got through spring ball, and I was one of the only coaches on staff that was not from Texas. And Coach Dykes, who was the head coach at the time, gave us like 3 or 4 weeks off in the summer to go home. And that was very generous of him. And that was something I was very much looking forward to because, again, I'm the oldest of 4. I'm very blessed with a very close family. And I was just homesick and I wanted to be back and be around them and spend some meaningful time with them. And we had one more recruiting weekend before we were able to go home. And I remember Coach Powell we're driving the recruits around. He was like, my hands hurt. Something's wrong. My hands hurt. And we were like, all right, well, let's get back to the facility, because that's we'll see the athletic trainers. They're kind of like the first stop for coaches, athletes, when anything goes wrong. Huge shout out to the athletic trainers. They're an overlooked support vehicle for everybody, for athletes, coaches, administrators. But and Coach Powell was like, no, I need to go to the hospital now. And so we're like, okay, this is pretty serious. So we took him to the hospital. The next morning at like 4 a.m., I was in my car driving back to Virginia. I came back a few weeks later for preseason. Coach Powell hadn't been discharged from the hospital yet. They could not figure out what was wrong with him. They pretty much put him into like a medically induced coma while they tried to figure it out. Within that first few months, he lost about 100 pounds. So he was a big guy, but 100 pounds on anybody is a ton of weight. And he looked like a skeleton version of himself. He lost feeling in his hands and his legs. So he could move them, but he couldn't grab a coffee mug. He couldn't grab a spoon to feed himself. He couldn't brush his teeth. He couldn't walk anymore. And so he had to be put into an electric wheelchair. And, all of this was going on. And I was just seeing firsthand, how much weight it was putting on the Powell family. Because he was married. They had 3 young kids. And now he's sick and his wife's taking care of him and trying to keep, the household in order. And I was working 70, 80-hour weeks as a graduate assistant coach at SMU. And then at nights, I would go to their house and help with kids, get them ready for school, and spend the night there, get them ready in the morning, because he was in and out of the hospital so often. It was procedure after procedure, test after test, trying to figure out what was wrong with him. And it ended up being cancer. And it was just the way the cancer was attacking his body was very rare and very aggressive. And it ended up spreading, unfortunately. And he passed away a few years later in 2021. So he fought it as hard as he could for 3 years. I've told the story a million times. It never gets any easier. But for 3 years, I watched that terrible disease destroy my friend, spiritually, emotionally, physically. And it's just really, it's something you don't forget. And so just after seeing it, a lot of the coaches rallied around him. They had a super successful GoFundMe, but, I just started to get this idea, this feeling, this conviction that coaches in general, not just college football coaches, but coaches any sport, any level of competition, anywhere in the country, they pour so much of themselves into their athletes. There's no safety net for them. And I just didn't think that was fair, because coaches make, and it's not just me saying that, there's data to back this up, but the coaches are some of the most formative relationships young people have in their entire lives. And so I think I could confidently make the case that coaches are a pillar in our society, and it just feels like they're so overlooked, and that they deserve to have a safety net for them. And so that's kind of where the idea came from. I started talking to my college roommate, who, Katie, you'll like this. He was my high school rival, bitter high school rival. Katie and I went to the same high school, for reference. I think I'm a few years older, but my best friend Lou, who's the co-founder of BMF, went to Liberty Bealton. And that's also the high school that my wife went to. So we like them now, but we didn't at the time. And I just started talking to Lou about this. And, he was the one that really encouraged me to look into starting a charity, not only to help the Powell family, but maybe help the next coaching family that something like this happens to. Life just doesn't go their way, and it's not fair. And, we could hold their hand and walk alongside them and hopefully get them to a better place. And when I was in graduate school at JMU, I took one nonprofit management class. I had no interest in nonprofit management. It was just to check a box so I could fulfill a concentration. And that ended up being the professor, Dr. Jennifer Taylor, who I reached out to years later and kind of Shark Tanked the idea for this for. And she said it had legs, and she kind of walked me through how to incorporate and start a charity. And yeah, we started it with $500 out of my own wallet 6 years ago. And, fast forward to now, we're way bigger than that. We have a long way to go, but we've we've kind of evolved it from this passion project to honor Coach Powell and his family to something that's really, I could make the case that we've saved people's lives and saved families. And it's something I am extremely proud of. And yeah, and that's a long-winded answer, probably way more than you bargained for from what's my connection to JMU. But I had to tell the whole story to kind of give everybody the background on me and kind of where this came from and how deeply entangled in JMU it is. We're a JMU charity, even if we don't have an official affiliation with the athletic program or the university.
When you mentioned it there or earlier on too about kind of the coaches not really having a foundation or a support system before that kind of helps them through it. So when you're watching Coach Powell go through his struggles, how quickly did you realize that that was an area that was kind of lacking in support?
Yeah, it was it's a great point, Katie, and it's completely true. And it's there's good people everywhere, and I'm so blessed to be able to work in this industry now, and I get to meet so many people that are talented and really just use whatever platform they've been given to serve the greater good. And it's really, really humbling to be around those people. And what my perspective was so many people want to help, but when a family's going through something like what the Powells went through, or any of the families that we've helped, they circle the wagons and they're entirely focused on just getting to the next day, and they really just block out a lot of the outsiders and the outside noise, so they can just kind of rally as a family. And so we're able to kind of establish what we do, right? We're not GoFundMe. We don't just give families a check and wish them good luck. And a lot of times money helps. It's a resources issue, but most of the time, most of the cases that we intervene with are not. It's just these once in a lifetime freak accidents that nobody has any real experience navigating, that we're able to come in and kind of lend our expertise and walk alongside people and help them in thoughtful and meaningful ways. Kind of the philosophy that life is a team sport, and every case looks different. It's all predicated on what the family needs and what they express to us. But a lot of the times it's, we helped a young coach, a lot of parallels to Coach Powell, but he was about to undergo he had a brain tumor that they were going to remove, 24-hour procedure. And, we were able to help the family get into the oncologist that they wanted to see, and help them secure the means to have that procedure done. But like a lot of the things that we did for that family were also like, we got an attorney to work with them to make sure that he had a will. His wife had medical power of attorney to make decisions on his behalf in case he was incapacitated during the procedure. Just things that people don't really think of. And in addition to that, we were able to help pay their mortgage for a few months, kind of give them the financial freedom to just focus on recovery. That allowed the family to be able to go up. This procedure was in Boston, but the family was able to go get a hotel, be up there for a few weeks until he was discharged from that hospital. And he's at home recovering now, has been for a few years in remission. And so that was like our first big, we really moved the needle for this family. And so I hope that answers your original question, Katie.
Yeah, I think, us as we work in the media or you've been around football for so long, we see coaches go through their entire careers and start as a grad assistant and work their way up. I think a lot of the general public probably, when they hear a college football coach, they might be thinking, oh, I hear Curt Cignetti makes $13 million a year now, and not realize the challenges that a lot of people who are coaches go through, whether it is just not knowing where the family is going to be next year because like their boss is on the hot seat or things like that. Like, do you get a lot of, I guess, feedback from people who like, well, I didn't know that, like, this is how hard it is for coaches and their families when, there's so many of them that are just celebrities that people maybe are more aware of?
Yeah, there is definitely a conception. All coaches are, Big Ten or SEC coaches that make at least $1 million a year. And obviously that's a very, very small percentage of coaches, right? And, like the example I just gave, the family that we helped, that was a youth basketball coach. It wasn't those are the people that need our help. And so I don't want to say we have like a Robin Hood role in the coaching community, but we just want to shed light on, I was talking to a coach recently who had just gotten hired to be at a big school. And I asked him, one of the things that we recommend to coaches is you have a financial person. Your financial health is tied to all the other facets of your health. So it's one of the things we recommend. And I asked him, like, you got this big break, what are you going to do now? And I'll never forget his answer was, I have to pay back all the debt that I've accrued over the last few years of coaching at the Division III level, Division II level. I was making $25,000 a year with a wife and 2 kids. So that's a real, and that's not an isolated incident. That is a lot of coaches' stories. And so, and like to your point, Shane, like they could make $1 million for a year or two, and then they could get fired, and then they're back at the Division II level making $25,000. Or, I never thought of this until we did a focus group with some of the coaches. The stress is constant, right? Because if you're having a bad season, you're thinking we're all going to get let go and going to be looking for jobs next year. But then they also kind of enlightened me to the perspective of we're having a really good year. We're worried about our coach taking a bigger job, and we don't know if we're going to be brought with them or if we're going to get left behind, And so they're like, it's no matter what, we're stressing over our jobs, our families, our finances. And so it's just never ending.
And I know from our past conversations how important it is kind of shedding the light on the Big Man Foundation and getting the word out there. But when you look across what you've been able to build so far with it, how important to have kind of word of mouth or things like Aaron Stinney's cleats in the NFL's like My Cleat, My Cause. How important are those kind of messages to just get the brand of the Big Man Foundation spread out around the coaching community?
Yeah, and that's a great question, and it's definitely a huge opportunity for us. Me as an athlete, I was a role player at best. I never started one game at JMU. I had to work really, really hard to be really, really average, which I'm extremely proud of. But I have no star power behind me when I go to try to get in with big time coaches or big time corporations in our ecosystem, and so having people like Aaron Stinney, who got in early, he was one of the co-founders of BMF. Having him involved is super important, and it just kind of helps legitimize us in a way. And we had a full circle moment with Brian Shore was one of the ones. He got in around the same time as Stinney, right when we were first launching, and now he's the big time tight end coach at JMU, and so it's just really helps us in so many ways. Just a big opportunity for us as an organization is, we've kind of carved out a new niche in philanthropy. So a lot of charitable organizations, and there's a lot of really great ones, but a lot of them is already like mission awareness. Like people already know that like children's literacy is an issue, and that needs resources to be able to solve that, because that predicts a lot of long-term outcomes for young people. Cancer is another one, right? The American Cancer Society and all the other organizations that go to cancer. Like a lot of people know that cancer is an issue. But for us, like a lot of people don't know that coaches are struggling. And so it's kind of a twofold issue for us, where we have to convince people of the need, and then we also have to convince them of our ability as an organization to address that need. So yeah, getting the bigger coaches involved, and not even coaches, the bigger organizations and businesses and thought leaders, really just kind of helps legitimize us and our organization and our mission.
I know when we talked a couple of years ago too, it was right after, Coach Chesney and his staff had gone through their first spring, and now with Coach Napier and his staff going through their first spring, how are you kind of introducing it to, your alma mater and kind of where this whole thing circles back to? How are you introducing the Big Man Foundation to them?
Yeah, and every coaching staff that's come through since my time there has been super receptive to us and have been really loyal to us. Even after they've left and gone on to other schools, have always still been extremely friendly. And I haven't had a chance yet to sit down with Coach Napier and really kind of talk to him and hear his story. I've met him a handful of times, and excellent first impressions of him and the entire staff. So I'm really looking forward to the opportunity to kind of come back and get them. I got to find a time of the year. They're still scrambling. They're on the road recruiting right now, but just get a time when things are relatively slower for them, and just be able to give them my 10-minute elevator pitch of here's who I am, here's my story, here's what we do. Would love to have you guys involved. But everything so far has been extremely positive. with the new staff.
Yeah, I know you, like you said, you still got to meet with Coach Napier and everything, but it does seem like the response from the JMU faction, the community throughout multiple coaching staffs, it seems like they've been very receptive to what you want to do. Obviously, it's not just a JMU charity, but like you said, it is a JMU charity. Like, what's it meant to you that you've gotten that reaction from, changing regimes at your alma mater?
Yeah, it's super encouraging, right? We had we had one of the previous assistant coaches that had left, and I can't name names, but just made I had a relationship with him, but not like a super close relationship with him by any means. We didn't talk every week or anything, but made a really significant unsolicited gift a few months ago, and to us, like that, it's kind of proof that our mission resonates and that our organization resonates. But I also think too, like, to get from year one to, we're in year 6 now, but the statistic is that 90% of new charities don't make it to year 5, right? And so we're an exception. Of those 10% that do make it to year 5, a lot of them have like the angel donor, they call it, that's kind of has the means to kind of bankroll the operation until it's sustainable. And we don't have it. We've built it brick by brick for the last 6 years. And I can honestly say, like, we wouldn't have gotten this far to where we're kind of in this maturation phase of going from startup to kind of an established nonprofit. We wouldn't have gotten to this point if it wasn't for, JMU Nation and their support. And it's not just the donors that make it possible for us to have we can't do anything if we don't have funding, right? Just like any other organization. But even just, all the different JMU sports podcasts that have given me a half hour to an hour on the microphone to just kind of share our story, and all the coaches that have come in and out, and the administrators. Matt Roan has been awesome. I still talk to Jeff Bourne, helps me. I talk to him about once a month, and he just is kind of like a mentor to me. And so it's just really special to me to have JMU kind of still pouring into our organization. And it's something I'm extremely proud of, right? Whenever I go speak to a coaching staff or speak to coaches or go to a convention, one of the first things I lead with is that I'm a JMU Duke, and that my story begins at JMU. And so it's something I definitely wear on my sleeve, and something that it's in our blood.
When you kind of mentioned it there with how difficult it can be to grow a nonprofit, and I know the last time we talked, you were looking to take the Big Man Foundation kind of out of that infancy period and really grow it. Kind of talk about those difficulties of getting it to this point and the fact that you have been able to take it through that.
Yeah, I mean, I've learned a ton, right? I was a political science major at JMU, public policy administration, turned football coach that turned into nonprofit executive with no background in nonprofits, and wouldn't be here. I've developed a lot. I love being coached, and I've had some great mentors that have poured into me and helped me develop and become a better administrator, a better fundraiser, better at administering our programs. So I'm very grateful for that. But yeah, like you said, Katie, it's uniquely hard to scale a nonprofit just because of the business model is so much different than like a for-profit business. If we have a proof of concept, like what we do is needed, we can only fund about like when we first started, we were looking for people that we could help with our grants. Now we're at the point where we can only fund about 1 in every 3 grants. So our awareness of our mission has grown. Our organization needs to grow with it. But the opportunity for us is that, unlike a private business, like we can't have equity rounds to raise capital to scale, right? We can't operate at a deficit. We can't take out loans. So it's just, we rely on the generosity of others to fuel our mission and our growth.
Well, and then kind of talking about your growth too, I wanted to touch on what you were able to do this last weekend of going down and attending the Waterboy Charity Gala with the Long family, who, is that Long family of Howie Long, Chris Long, and kind of the impact that they continue to make in this area too. So what was that experience like?
Yeah, well, it was really special for me to be able to go. and be invited to attend. That meant a lot to me. And I think that's kind of a social proof of our organization growing and us starting to get a footprint in this athletic, this athletic adjacent philanthropy world, especially with the Longs being from Central Virginia as well, being based out of Charlottesville. It was incredibly humbling to be able to go. And, I've said it not a million times, but a handful of times over the past week. I still cannot get over just, it was a gala. They had a big, it was kind of like a wedding kind of vibe. They had a big outdoor tent and cocktails, and there's a few hundred people there. But, Chris Long took the time. I've never met him, but I met him actually when I was like a high schooler and I went to UVA's football camp for a summer. And I like shook his hand and got his autograph. But I was able to stand and talk to him for like 10 minutes. And we had a lot of like mutual friends that we didn't know. And so and Howie was very similar, really just like salt of the earth, humble, kind people. And so that was really special for me. And so, I don't want to say I wasn't expecting that, but it was almost like a pleasant surprise, I guess. So, and another one of the mutual friends, I kind of lost sight of this, but Aaron Stinney went to St. Anne's Belfield in Charlottesville, and him and Chris were close. And I forgot, like Aaron Stinney's dad was the basketball coach there, and so Chris was asking me if I knew him, and a lot of the people that were at this event had some connection to the Longs or to the St. Anne's Belfield, and it was really kind of humbling to hear how highly everyone thought of not only Aaron Stinney, but his entire family. They're really valued members of that community. And so that was really special. And I was able to share that with them afterwards. But yeah, really a humbling experience to be able to go. And it was inspiring too. They had just crossed the 10-year mark with their charity. And so I was able to talk to their executive director and just say, like, I'm in year 6. I know how hard it is. So congrats on getting to year 10. That's a major accomplishment. And I probably have more of an appreciation for it than most people that are here in this room. So keep up the good work.
So what should we look for in the future? What's next for Big Man Foundation that people should keep an eye out for?
Yeah, that's a great question. For us, we've kind of had to make the decision as an organization where like we could kind of stay where we're at in perpetuity, right? We could raise the same amount of money we're raising right now every year and be able to help a handful of families each year and pat ourselves on the back and say we're doing a good enough job. But I think for us is the only being able to fund 1 in every 3 grants isn't acceptable to us. And so I think it just highlights the need of our organization in the coaching community. And so I think for us, it's foot on the gas, and we have to grow this thing because we have to help as many people as we can. And so I'd really just like to see it kind of start to continue to snowball the way it has the last 5 years. And the end goal isn't to raise a certain amount of money or to get on, a big platform or a podcast to talk about our mission. It's the end goal is to help as many people as we can because people are struggling. And so I think that's our goal, is just to be able to help more people in more meaningful ways. And we had a coach, it was actually a coach that we were able to help a few years ago. He just got hired to be a strength conditioning coach at Boise State from a small FCS school. And I was asking him like what that transition was like. And he was like, as coaches, what you've been able to provide at a lower level with less, you want to be able to do at a higher level with more. And I was like, that's the same philosophy that we have, right? What we've been able to do with the money the funding that's been entrusted to us, we want to be able to do at a higher level with more funding. So that's our goal for the next few years, is to kind of become an institution within the coaching community.
Katie, do you have anything else?
No, but I think that was a good one to end it on.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on, Casey. And thanks for everybody who's been listening. Again, this is the Purple and Bold podcast from DNR Media. And check us out, and be sure to check out the Big Man Foundation. You can Google them and pull up their website and find out even more than what we just talked about. And any way you want to help them out would be great for everyone. So, and like I said, thanks for listening.